Well, welcome everyone. Wow, this is a much larger crowd than we were anticipating, so I'm really happy to see everybody here. I'm Barb Stanton. I work at Prairie St. John's, and I'm standing in for Joanne today. We're not going to be doing a formal presentation like we typically do because we have such an amazing panel of folks here that we're going to keep this really informal today for people to be able to ask questions or express things that are going on, and I'll have the panel introduce themselves in just a minute. So I'm going to let the panelists introduce themselves, just briefly who you are, what your role is, and then we'll get things started. So, Blake.
All right, I'm Blake Plankers. I work for Moore Public Schools as an autism consultant. I work with kids from birth to age 21, and it's awesome. I love it.
I'm Brad Benton. Our grandson has moved into the home with us, and he's 11 years old. We're going to transition this year from elementary to middle school, which even when we had our children going through, that was a big time, and now it's a bigger time. So Riley's on the spectrum, and we're dealing with all his needs and concerns and maybe fears and everything else along with it, including ours.
Okay, my name is John Cody. I have Asperger syndrome, and therefore I'm able to give you a first-person view on the subject. I've lived it my entire life, so I'm a bit of an expert. And I like to be able to share, help, and help other people understand it better, understand the experiences.
I'm Troy Stew. I'm a professional at Moore High School, and I like over there too. I've worked with kids on spectrum disorder all the way from autism, Asperger's, and now I'm lately working with kids with disabilities as well.
I'm Chris McHugh, and I work at US Bank as a data analyst, and I'm also on the spectrum. I don't know if I'm so much an expert per se. I just kind of live life, you know. But I kind of serve a similar thing with John, to where if you have questions from a more perspective thing, I can hopefully answer them. Hopefully.
And I'm Sylvia DeCrane, and I work with Fargo Public Schools, and I help teams of teachers and parents work with kids that have autism or Asperger's.
Thanks. And one of the things that we've been doing at Prairie St. John's as we went through some training and education is to take a 7-day challenge to not say no, and to find different ways to express to someone that they can't do something, or that you need to have them think about something in a different way. So I wanted to explain that a little bit. And one example I'm going to give you is something that just happened. In my window of my office, if I have it covered, it means that I'm with somebody and don't interrupt. And if I've got it down, it means that the kids in the program can come and knock, and you come into my office for a while to take a break. So I explained that to somebody, and I had somebody come knock on my door, and I realized that the window was open, but I was meeting with somebody. So I needed to let him know that it wasn't a good time for him to come into my office, after I'd already set a rule that when the window is open, he can come in my office. So he came, and I knew that if I would have said, no, you can't come in right now, what do y'all think would have happened? What? So instead I said, oh, I know you want to come in my office right now, and I appreciate that you came and you were so thoughtful and you knocked on the door, and I know my window is open, and I made a mistake. But what I need to do is to have you know that I would love to have you in my office, but there's somebody with me right now. Can you come back later? Turned around, trotted down the hallway, and was fine. So a lot of times it's not that we can't deliver messages of no, it's the way that we do it. So that was the one line on here that I wanted to explain a little bit more about. So kind of giving everybody in this room the 7-day no challenge, and see if you can go for that amount of time not using the word no. So with that, you're making a face at me, Chris. You can do it. So any questions to start off with? How many of you have children who are anxious about starting the school year? Okay. How about if we talk a little bit about what some of the anxieties that you're hearing about, and sometimes I think parents are more anxious than kids are about starting the school year, and that's sort of filtering down. So maybe if folks could just talk a little bit about what you're seeing, and then you can turn it over to our panel to address that. Yeah.
Concern that I thought I brought forward is when my son's on the spectrum, and when he entered middle school, it was a very rough transition. And that's actually when we found out in 6th grade that he was on the spectrum. Now he's going to be entering high school this year. So he's a little bit more comfortable with the transition because, you know, Davies or Discovery Middle School kind of introduced him to that. But I think something he's struggling with is in high school, they don't have a supply list. They're kind of, the teachers say, you know, we've kind of set you up to decide what you will know what you need for school, for supplies or for organization. And I think that's a struggle that, you know, some of these kids have on the spectrum, is that the organization skills aren't there.
And that's really abstract.
Right, right.
And maybe what we could do too is, in answering the question, if everybody's got a tip that they can give to parents about starting the school year, let's do that. And I'm walking out of camera range to go with I'll do that.
Yeah, it's really tough waiting until that first week is over, until they get all of the syllabi and everything from their teachers, and then they have a better sense. But I think what I've typically done in the past when I was teaching at the high school is I would require the kids to have some kind of organizational system and give them different options, because you know the binder system isn't going to work for some kids. You know, trapper keepers can be too cumbersome, and you end up with a lot of kids walking around with everything in their backpack.
Right.
So getting that established right off the get-go is really important. And so I think part of that is going to come from talking with that case manager, whoever is in charge of that resource period.
Okay.
If indeed an organization is a component of that class, and absolutely should be, kind of using that person as your go-to that first week. Because, you know, it's really tough when that sort of thing is up in the air.
Okay.
It's already an area of struggle.
I guess from my perspective, from what I've seen with my grandson, is at least giving him the options of, is there certain things that you think you want? And even if they don't work out with the teachers or whatever, at least he goes in feeling, okay, I've got this, you know, and I know I want to have this with me, and maybe this will help. And if down the road it doesn't, then that's fine.
Right.
You know, I guess I try to give him options as much as possible, but limit the choices between two.
Okay.
So that he doesn't have a big, broad spectrum of, well, there's 17 different types of pens or pencils that you can choose from. Let's narrow it down so that it's, you know, it's an A or B choice deal. I think sometimes when he has too many choices, then his stress level goes up because he isn't quite sure, well, am I really making the right decision or not? And then I always preface it with, it's whatever you want. It's whatever you like to have, you know, so that there's not, you know, I try to figure out all the details in the background going up to that point before I show him two choices.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'd also say look at options. Look at binders, like you were saying, binders, trapper keepers, and like that. Also, I think one thing that you find that would be helpful is, for an example, I just recently went on to a plane trip, and to figure out how to organize, how to grade things, I just looked up travel suggestions for items. So there can be websites out there. Just go to Google and say recommended supplies for high school, and then kind of see, okay, I got this, I got this, I got this. Maybe I can use this. I didn't think about that at first. I got this. Oh, that's a good idea. I'll take that one too. And narrow it down from there or add from there, but use that as a template.
Okay.
But choices is good. Some stuff can stay in the locker, some stuff can stay in a binder. And yeah, that would be my recommendation.
Thank you.
Adding on to what they say, K through 12, your son's transit, this is going to be the biggest transition he makes for any kid, is that transition to high school. They're all terrified. They're sitting at home right now terrified of the fact that they're going to have to go to all of them,
Right.
even the kids that aren't on the spectrum. So this is going to be the biggest transition he's going to make probably one of the biggest ones of his lifetime.
Okay.
He got a new school, hundreds and hundreds of kids, more than he had. He's going to be going to his own classes. There's people 4 years older than him. This is a fantastic time to let him make some decisions for himself as well.
Okay.
Obviously, go meet with your teachers and paraprofessionals and stuff before you even get to the school.
Right.
And let him make those choices. And I think he'll have a much easier transition if you let him a little bit, because it's going to be a rough first couple of weeks.
Right, yeah.
And it is for every kid, even the kids not on the
Yep.
spectrum right now. But if you give him some input and let him feel like he's got some of that control,
Right.
I think he'll have a much easier time.
Okay, and that's the thing, I'm glad you said that, because it's like, I always feel like I want to help him and do it for him, but yet I want him to
I
grow into.
heard a statement the other day, don't teach your kids to fail.
Right,
And it kind of struck me, because kids aren't born feeling they have to, someone teaches them to do that.
right,
Where if you see small children and stuff like that, they follow, they get right back up, they teach themselves. We teach our kids to fail by not giving them the opportunities.
thank you.
To feed off Troy's a bit, understanding a lot of the different sources of anxiety and, addressing them as they come up, always kind of the daily check-ins, like I have daily check-ins with myself, even just I talk to myself a lot, just to see how I'm doing today, what needs to happen in my life just to get through today, get through tomorrow, so that way I'm also progressing towards a hopefully productive and still employed future. And making sure that everything's going according to plan. And for me, for high school, I was doing that pretty instinctively, except with less fancier words. And I think where it helped a lot from my parents' perspective was I knew that I could ask them for help and for the most part get it, but they were pretty good about, if I needed, to figure out things on my own, to kind of let me figure out things on my own.
Okay.
It's obviously hard to strike
Yeah.
that balance, and you'll inevitably strike too left or too right of that balance, and that's okay. You gotta be at peace with yourself in that too.
Right,
But,
yeah,
yeah.
thank you.
I think the environment is really important too, along with knowing the supplies.
Yeah.
And whether there's a case manager or someone that you could go to maybe find out, is there a preferred spot in classrooms to sit? Would your child like to go ahead of the crowds in the hallway or maybe stay back for a minute?
Right.
Those are some other things to consider,
Okay.
knowing your own child. But anything you could have that's becomes more of a routine, becomes easier.
Right.
Brad, I think you even went to school and took some videos or pictures. And sometimes that's really helpful to maybe even share what you did.
I'm not sure where we heard it through or not, but we just went, once we found out what his classrooms were and everything like that, we just took Wife's phone and then took pictures of the rooms, and then we've got the map, and then we've set up a little board for him that this is my class for this teacher, Now, on the 24th, we'll actually be able to put the teachers' faces to the rooms, which that's a big deal right there and everything. But and we've already had him over to the school about 4 times now, so that we've done walkthroughs and things like that. We've already met with the principal and vice principals at the middle school, which it's nice that when our sons went through elementary school, these were the same gentlemen that were there, not all necessarily the teachers, but, so some of the staff knows us from back then and everything, which, makes it a little bit easier for us on that aspect and everything.
Right.
But it's just knowing, and simple little things like we bought a lock and we made sure through the school that it would still be okay that we could have our own personal lock instead of the school's lock on it.
Okay.
And as long as the school has the numbers for at the office, so that in case there's any reason that they need to get in, that they can get in. And they said they've had students there that have some of the combinations spell out a word. Now, I'm not sure where you purchase those locks that actually have the alphabet on it, but if
Okay.
that's easier for your child, that's an option. And, you know, I just played little games with him at home. Can you beat Grandpa as to how fast we can open up your lock?
Right.
Make a game out of it, you know, have some fun with it. I painted the back of it white on the back of his lock, and then put a big R for Riley in red on it.
Okay.
You know, so that it kind of personalizes it for him.
Right.
You know, so we've done little things like that, just so that when he gets there, and I mean, you know, I can remember our youngest son had a frustration his first day. He forgot his locker combination, couldn't remember it, and then he wasn't sure where he was supposed to go, and showed up for class and didn't have his books, and then he had to go down to the office, you know, and then he was embarrassed because of that, you know, in order to find out what his locker combination was, you know, and that's just with a normal kid that you have that. So it's just, you know, little things you can try to do.
You want to try to take as much of the mystery out of it as much as possible, because it's a scary transition for anybody. But for me personally, I think that the bigger transition was from elementary school to middle school. Middle school was where they started introducing going to different rooms, having lockers, having going to different rooms for different subjects, and then that just carried over to high school. It's just a little bit of a higher level of that. But so I found that was a little bit of a less scary transition.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Thank you.
I just wanted to add, as you were talking, one thing to also consider that I didn't realize until I got an email. The very first week of high school, my son wasn't eating, and he didn't know, you know, which door to go in, because at this high school there was a door for hamburgers, there was another door where you go for sandwiches and stuff like that, and then, so he did, and if the lines were long, then he would avoid them altogether. So that was a thing that I didn't even think about, is all of a sudden he's at lunch, he doesn't know anybody, so he's sitting all by himself. It broke my heart, you know, when I got this call that says he isn't eating, he's just sitting by himself. So that might be another thing that you want to think about, is the whole lunch routine might be different, because you're not just going in the one room like they are in middle school, picking whatever they want. It's a little bit different.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. Good point.
You know, I was just saying to Courtney here, exactly what you described would be fantastic for, well, universal design for everybody that goes to school and their parents. Because just exactly what you're describing are the things that you can't anticipate. So you haven't walked through, because you don't know what the setup is necessarily.
I went and picked him up at McDonald's and ran it down there that day, because
Yeah.
they were saying he's not eating, he's just sitting by himself, and it literally, and then I don't know if it was better or worse, because I think the next day, then the principal went and sat with them. Now, I don't know if that's but, you know, that really drew attention to him, but, you know, I don't think he talked to him, but I don't know.
So how do we pilot a program where we take one of the junior highs in town and have someone do a video walkthrough of the whole school in advance, so every student who wants access to this and their parents can see how the school runs, what the classrooms look like, what the teachers, how many students would have less anxiety, would be nicer to the other students on those first days of school, and would make it easier on our kids who are higher anxiety to begin with.
It's a good idea.
Yeah.
We should
Like,
do it.
still, yeah.
Okay, come on guys. Who's gonna make this happen? Or the high schools, or the, because I mean, how many neurotypical kids?
Right.
And their parents.
And their parents?
Yeah.
Love you, James.
You know, I actually just came from a program that we run in Moorhead. Originally, it was just for the middle school and the high school, but we actually had a kindergarten group come in yesterday, and that it was a blast. Those kids are so much fun. And we have a couple hours where the kids we do some kind of getting to know each other activities, and we went to actually do a tour of the school, and so we explain all of the finer points of, you know, this is what line you go in, and if you have a lot of anxiety about getting there, or with long lines, we've had that issue more times than I can count, having trouble with the long lines. You know, this is what you can do in that instance, and these are the people that you can make arrangements with. And we have the students walk through their schedules. We talk about lockers. We talk about, any like someone said before, any source of anxiety that might come up. And so it hasn't been as well attended. I've been surprised, but I think I might steal that idea.
I'll
We might do
next time you do it.
Even a
Just
buddy
some
program.
videotape.
right videotape.
But I
it.
think the video program though, from an
Very good
anxiety
anxiety,
perspective.
You can watch it anytime and
Because,
over.
I mean, what my thought process was what you were saying about pictures. Jane and I had talked about this when you were talking about your labs and how cool would it be when we were talking about having like lab professors go and like introduce their labs online and stuff just to make it more interpersonal, because we were talking about how labs are sort of standoffish and how do you make them more. And so I was kind of sitting here thinking about that, but that would remove the anxiety of having to actually like go there in advance. And for the parents who are super busy and it's just one more thing to attend in advance.
I think that's part of the issue.
Yeah, I would go online as a parent and I would watch a walkthrough.
Yeah,
And see the teacher in front of their class or whatever, and this is Mrs. Schmidt or whatever, and she teaches math.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
I know what I'm doing tomorrow.
You could create a YouTube channel that would be dedicated directly for a certain high school. Walk through of the hallways, walk through the classrooms, kind of interviews with the teachers. That'd be easy to set up. Yeah.
Yeah, this is such and such a teacher's classroom, so you see what their classroom, and I know it's not as simple as that because teachers sometimes have different classrooms on different days and stuff. But, I mean, it would give you, this is what our lunch area looks like. Here's what some of your options are. And you could do it from the perspective of a student for the lunchroom. You could do it from, it wouldn't have to be all uncool stuff. I mean, it could be, student council president says, you could do some fun stuff with it. You could have this year's student council responsible for setting up stuff for next year it could be a project that the yearbook team takes on some stuff for incoming freshies for next year. Like you could have it be something that's taken on by different groups within the school, and it's kind of a cool thing to do too. It wouldn't have to all just be, this is the library.
I think getting other students involved, like you alluded to there, is a really good plan. I think it's going to, they're going to be more receptive than coming from a teacher or someone in an authority position. But yeah, I'd like to see more of that with students. And I think even on that first day, it'd be a cool. This is something we haven't done, but it would be a cool idea, is to kind of take an upperclassman and arrange for them to periodically check in with the freshman or even a sophomore, and just to make that that first week more bearable. Because I mean we've had kids come to the program that I described earlier. They've come and look through the school on their own, and they even get to that first day and there's still a few things that they're confused about. I had a student come up to my classroom about 3 times, not knowing where certain things are, and that's okay. As long as they have a go-to person. And it might be a little cooler though if it were an upperclassman.
Well, I know colleges do such a good job with that, about having like upperclassmen for that first week really available, and high schools don't. And why don't high schools do that?
I was at Hillcrest Academy yesterday doing a training for them, and they do that. They match their students up as an upperclassman with somebody who's coming in new, and they stay with them all year.
Although, for our kids on the spectrum, I don't know, I mean, everyone's different, but like my son wouldn't just walk up to someone and, and go ask questions. So that wouldn't solve the problem for my son. He wouldn't do that. I mean, that would help in general sense for the school to be more open, but it wouldn't solve my son's problem.
I would guess that all the Fargo school systems probably operate the same way, correct, Sylvia? Because Roosevelt Elementary School went up to Ben Franklin last year towards the end of the year. And they did a nice job. Each one of the classes went to a 6th grade class. And each one of the students in that class then was assigned one of the kids coming in from 5th grade to sit and kind of talk to them about their little laptop that they're going to be getting for, well, not a laptop, tablet, there you go. Tablet device that they would be using with inside the school. And then when we did our walkthrough, they walked with them, so that there was, a kid that's at the school was like, oh yeah, and then of course when they went to the lunchroom and they had their lunch, then the kids were like, oh, and you can get extras here. Because that's a huge deal between elementary to now going to middle school is if you can get extras like a cookie or a juice, you know.
Right.
And the school does within that, they can set monitoring through the cafeteria as to how much the students can put onto their deals so that, you know, all of a sudden the kid isn't talking to 6 of his friends going, hey, buy me a cookie, hey, buy me a cookie, you know.
Right.
The kid walks away with
You can't do that at the, you can't do that at the high school though. I could control the lunch when he was in middle school, but they would not let me do it in high school. Because my son spends his $25 on muffins. So, and that flavored water,
yeah.
you know, instead of, and I was trying to have him just eat the lunch. You can't in high school anymore.
We're trying to help encourage independence.
Yeah, because in middle school I could take out the a la carte option.
Yeah.
My son would, 2 cookies after my lunch, 2 pieces of banana
So,
bread.
and so now what
After your lunch, you're fine.
now what I do is I give him $20 or $25 or whatever it is every week. Because if I put it all in there, so let's say I put $50 in there, he will spend all 50. He checks that balance with them every day.
Okay.
So he knows how much he has. So I had to set up a routine. I'm like, you know what, this is all you get. And if you blow it all on Monday because you have a big breakfast, then that's,
Right.
you know, there I gave him some of the responsibility with it. But I found that, yeah, if I had a bunch of money in there, he would spend, and then I had to block him being able to borrow from his brother's account as well.
Because then he'd steal their money and spend that shit muffins too.
Oh, the teacher would say, well, do you have any brothers or sisters that go? We could just take it, transfer it from their account. Just things to think about.
So you had to have a divorce. They had to be divorced.
Wow, that's quite clever. Other questions folks have? If not, I have one. Biggest struggle for me right now are kids who ended the school year badly and are needing to start again. And getting over that hurdle, and they don't even want to talk about it about going to school. And anxious parents anticipating tricky first day, first week.
Oh,
So any suggestions of how to, because it's tough enough when you've got somebody who's just starting new, but when you're coming from kind of a traumatic experience at the end of school and now you're going back. Thoughts?
Yeah. And I don't know how feasible this would be to implement, but I just think that first week for our kids is so stressful to begin with. And they've got a lot of sources of anxiety, and I really think those harder, content-based academics could maybe wait in those instances. I know, and it's tough because I've got a special ed perspective, whereas a general ed teacher might feel a little bit differently because they've got the standards to cover, they've got this, that, and the other that they've got to somehow squeeze in before the end of school. But I really think you're going to be getting more bang for your buck if you focus on building relationships, getting to know the ins and outs of that student. Implementing that, something like that, is easier said than done, I would imagine. And that's going to be kind of an uphill battle with administration and other folks of the like. But I think if we can focus on getting a nice solid base, and school is a safe place. There are people here that can help me. This is what I can do when I get into this kind of a situation. Those kind of basic things that a neurotypical kid might just kind of figure out incidentally. I think we need to be addressing those a little more intentionally, right from the get-go. And that would be one kind of idea, albeit a pipe dream at this point. But I think that's something we can be working towards.
How about a couple of things that are just practical things that you can set up at the beginning of school that are things like, okay, when I get just completely overwhelmed, what do I do? I mean, and who should they be talking to about that, the first week or the first couple of weeks when there's a lot of anxiety? Do you have suggestions?
No, I
You
mean, I would
would
say
hope there'd be a case manager if there's an IEP. that that person would be aware of those needs and would be kind of looking ahead, putting those in place. Barb, back to your question too, sometimes a new school year means a fresh beginning too, so possibly new teachers can make a difference, but again, you really hope that there's someone on that special ed team that's aware of those difficulties and can kind of
They may be aware of the
proactive.
difficulties, but they may not be aware of our particular kid. You know,
No.
they don't know them that well yet.
This is just off the top of my head, so it may be really dumb. But you know, I think about how for GLBTQ kids, we put the rainbow up on doors so that kids know that this is a safe person to talk to about this topic. I wonder why couldn't people put a Pokemon on their door or something else to indicate that this is a safe person if you're overwhelmed or to come talk to, just as a visual indicator, so you don't sort of bounce off, or even pins that people wear the first couple weeks, something that indicates I'm safe to talk to.
When I see kids that have had a bad end of the year, I can usually figure out that they didn't have very good coping mechanisms during the end of the year. Make sure your kid has a good coping mechanism, whether that's headphones, find out where that resource room is or that safe space is for them, set it up with their teacher. This isn't the teacher's first rodeo. They want your kid to do good and stuff like that. If you bring home 5 pages of homework and they already know how to do it, it gets very frustrating. If they can do it the first time, ask them if they could have less homework. And also find that one person that's their go-to person, whether it's a para, whether it's a teacher, whether it's a counselor, whether it's even an older brother or a friend or something like that, and sometimes it may be even you, that they can go to when they're feeling stressed out, because they have to let those people know. And then find their coping mechanism. Like you said, when you have a bad end of the year, it's not going to get usually better if they use the same coping mechanism that they used at the end of last year. You need to try something new.
You know, a high school girl showed me a new app she has yesterday. It's called Emergency Chat. Anybody heard of it? Unfortunately, right now, we could only find it available for Android, even though somebody told me it's also on iOS. And basically, it's on your phone. You tap the app that says Emergency Chat, and there's a text there that says, somebody who has panic attacks developed it. And it's for when he's having a panic attack, he taps on the app and he shows somebody his phone. And it says, I'm having a panic attack, I can't speak right now, here's what I need you to do. And you can type in your own text of what it is you need, so that if you get overwhelmed, you've got those coping tools of maybe I can't express myself right now, but here it is.
There's a notes feature in any phone.
Yep.
And I actually have a note in my phone because I have complex migraines and I can't speak when I get these certain migraines. And so I have a note saved in my phone that says, this is a complicated migraine, I'm having Broca's aphasia, I'm not having a stroke, I just can't speak right now. Like, I have that saved in my phone, so it's the same idea.
Yeah.
And I just hand it to people.
Yeah, yes.
So you can do that with your phone.
Because we know how hard it is to talk when
Mhm.
you're that overwhelmed or that
Mhm.
anxious to do
Mhm.
that.
And so
That's a great idea, and I didn't think
you don't even
could
need
just
an
do it on a
app,
note.
just the note section.
Yep.
And have it saved. And but something I was going to say is this is something I did last year with Kale when we went back to school. And I get that not every school will do this, but last year when we went back to school, Kale had had a hard end of the year. We go to Harwood. He'd had a hard end of the year. I talked to the school ahead of time, and I really believe in the theory of place. Okay, so I believe in when you've had a good experience in the space, in the place, it changes how you feel when you go there. So I called the school and said, can I have a party, or like a little tiny get together in the space that's going to be his classroom this year, and have him do something he likes to do there. And I talked to them, and I explained, well, I'll do everything, I'll take care of everything, and they said yes. And so we went and had a game time for just an hour and a half, and we played Minecraft in his classroom, and they let us. And it changed the way he felt when we started school. And so you have to really push, and you have to pull strings, but it changed the way the school year started completely.
That's a great,
It's really great.
is
And
anyone
building
writing
on
these down? That's a great
Yes.
idea.
And building on that, since we're talking about ending the previous year on kind of a bad note, especially for people on the spectrum. Then you have negative association, and that is a very, very strong emotion. And you're going into the school year expecting the worst possible case scenario. That's just kind of how that works. And that is pretty much what you need to do. The only way to really defeat a negative association is with a positive association. And so that is a very perfect thing of doing. As was said here before, is try to compartmentalize it by saying, okay, last year was, you know, these set of teachers, this grade, these rooms. Now I'm going into a different set of teachers, different rooms, different grade. It's an entirely new thing, so you can kind of block off the negative association and have a fresh start with something new. So just try to get that idea across. It's not. It's like the end of a calendar. January doesn't. It's not a continuation of December. It's starting brand new.
We actually went as far as to change all the colors of his school supplies for the next year. I mean, it sounds silly, but it really helped him refresh things.
Yeah, that would work.
You know, he said blue's, but blue's my favorite color, and I said, yeah, but blue was last year. Let's do green this year. Let's just do green. And green's Minecraft, and we associated it with something he liked, and it really, I mean, it sounds silly, but it seemed to help him. And really having that game time, it was just like an hour and a half, and we brought our own stuff, and it really did seem to help him kind of reset. And so for what it's worth, it would probably not work for everybody, but it really set the year off in a really good space. And his teacher couldn't be there the whole time, but she came for a little while, and so she was associated with that kind of positivity. And so
that is pretty much what you need to do. I would say it's perfect. Even the folders, I know, like you said, it seems small, but it's huge.
You know, going back to what you had mentioned about the cell phone thing, if you have a student that's going to rely on that, and you know, every school is going to have a different device policy, and I think ours at Moorhead changed, and you know, if they're going to be using it for self-regulation, organization, any of those things that their IEP addresses, it really ought to be in their adaptations page on their IEP, because you don't want it to be at the discretion of, you know, whatever that policy is. I mean, it's not like they're going to be messing around on Facebook or playing Pokemon Go. They might be, I don't know, maybe. But you know, just make sure that that's in the adaptations and it's clearly defined what that device is going to be used for. It's a way so that that student doesn't get into a tough situation where they might have to advocate for themselves more than they might be comfortable with. You get in touch with that case manager.
Questions? Any other questions? We're here to help you.
My son is very disorganized when it comes to his own school supplies, so like at the first parent conference I went to, I checked in the desk and like more than half of his school supplies are on, and the teacher's requesting. He doesn't keep track of them, or I don't know what happens to them, and by the end of the year there's nothing left. And I don't know what he does with them, and I was wondering if there's a way to help him to.
How old is he?
What?
How old is he?
9. He's going in the 4th grade and more.
So I'll say if he was older, check to see where his pen stash is. Mine usually is in the back of my car.
I mean, if they require like 48 pencils, then you would think that at the first conference in the fall, there would be that.
You'd be shocked at how many kids are like that, though.
Oh.
I mean, they use a pencil, throw it away sometimes.
Yeah. He has a really hard time.
It's a lot more common, I think, than you think it is.
Oh.
I have kids that can't even get their locker closed because they have so much stuff on the bottom that's fallen, and they have to kind of use their shoulder on the bottom, and is at kind of at a slant right now.
it's a good week if I can go the entire week without my passenger side seat somehow getting messy and just full and just with like random bits of garbage on it. Like it's a good week if that doesn't happen. And that pretty much summarizes my organization in middle school and high school, which really wasn't organization at all.
Zach could never find his stuff, even his work or his homework or his papers. They were always in his locker. They never got home. And so they've also, I mean, we had our IEP yesterday. He's now a senior. We finally have got it together, right? It was the best IEP we've ever had because the teachers were actually asking him questions. Is there a specific area you'd like to sit in the classroom? Things I wasn't even thinking about. Is when we do projects with teams, do you want to work with one person or a big group? You know, so they were actually asking him questions, which was great because he could give his own feedback. And it was answers that I didn't even expect. But what they've also done is he's got 2 hours where he doesn't have class. What am I trying to think of? Resource rooms or, yeah. And what they do is they dedicate 20 minutes, you're going to work on this subject, 20 minutes. And if you get those 2 done, then this last one is free time. And that's a really good motivation. And he doesn't have to bring stuff home. They actually keep it in folders there, so it doesn't ever get lost. So if you could ever get them to do that, that helps as well, mostly with the organization, because he doesn't have to lose it. But if they keep it there, and then he also, depending on how your IEPs are, he gets graded on what he does. If you hand him a 50-page test, he's going to shut down. So, you know, but if he only has to do part of it, and grade him on what he does accomplish. It all
Another recommendation, and that is a very good one, is when he has a really good day and his emotional energy is good, just practice with putting stuff in a binder, taking it out, putting it back in again, just kind of getting an idea of where things go. And then just repeat that. You can try to turn that into a pattern, turn that into a habit, and now become a routine. And then it will feel safe, comfortable, and secure to keep on doing that, because it will feel odd if you don't.
Can I give you a suggestion? So I work with adults on the spectrum, and one of the things that we've talked about with in the workplace is not having people's workspaces have stuff you don't need. And so we've talked about organization. I struggle with organization. I'm neurotypical as far as I know. I don't know. I really struggle with organization, and I've dealt with that by having way too many of things, so there's always one hand, right? But when I only have one of something, I pay a lot more attention to it. So what I've done with some of the times, when we work with people, we only put one pen in their workspace because they have to pay a lot more attention to where that one pen is. I wonder if you could talk to his teacher and only ever have him have one pencil. Only have him have one of things, and ask if you could keep back everything else in the space that the teacher has. And so he can't just throw everything away, if that would help him. I don't know, it's just a thought. I don't know if it would actually be useful or if it would just...
No, I was going to suggest that too, and I think if you give it to the teacher, and she even has this special spot in the classroom that's where his stuff is kept, that he knows he can go get it, but that's his stuff over there, maybe he wouldn't lose it as much.
Yeah, minimizing what you have to organize. Yeah.
Do you know if he loans them out or anything like that? Do you know if he loans them out or anything? I had a student last year that did that.
If he goes to some other location and then he comes back, I'm sure it's there. And for him to be able to find anything, I can say it's right there, and he's like, where? It's right there.
It's always in the bottom. Always at the bottom of the purse, yes.
The purse is over here. I can pull like 500 pens out of the bottom of my purse, but God forbid I can ever find a pen when I need a pen.
Although a suggestion with the right there comment, well, I had the same problem actually where someone says right there, I'm like, what? So with me, actually, you do have to be kind of hyper-specific, like right next to the orange. I don't know, there's no orange here, but it helps a lot with me.
Question. We've had new case managers every year, and I like how positive they kind of are in the beginning year, but sometimes the positivity kind of trumps, I mean, logic and reality. Like, oh, let's just see how it goes, it should be fine, you know, that kind of stuff. And when they don't know the kiddo or the situation, I feel like sometimes they don't really plan for a worst case scenario, which may or may not happen, but I don't feel like, you know, with new people starting off the year, there's a good emergency plan. Do you guys have any tips for that, for working with new case managers and really being just very grounded and realistic rather than, oh, this should be great, this will be a wonderful year, let's start it positive when...
A little more intentional.
Exactly, and practical,
Yeah.
There's a couple things that I would recommend. I guess sometimes what some parents do is kind of come up with a canned email that changes year to year that they send out to teachers, like this is what they need, this is what triggers certain behaviors. You know, and you can always request a team meeting too. Sometimes during that workshop week, it's a good time to get teachers together, and especially gen ed teachers if they're in the picture, to get them in there. And I've found the most success when we've been able to meet during that workshop week and just really iron out anything that anyone's concerned about, and you know, getting to the finer points of what makes your student tick and what, you know, helps them do well and what might trigger them.
And I feel like I've done that in the past, but I feel
It's
like
been
it's always
brushed
been sugar-coated and, oh, well, that needs to be more mature now, or that, you know, that kind of stuff, and that really hasn't been the reality, but I feel like that's been the coding. Has anybody ever experienced that?
I guess from my perspective, one thing that I feel lucky is that I'm a grandparent, and I went through having two quote-unquote normal kids going through school and everything, and when you're really in the middle of your jobs and your lifestyle and everything else, you know, things are tough, and sometimes you have a tendency as a parent to go, you know what, I struggle, all kids struggle. But now if we understand that our kids have certain needs when they're on the spectrum, and as a grandparent, I guess I no longer have that concept of myself of, gee, I don't want to become embarrassed, which as a parent, there's times where you say, gee, you know, you're embarrassing me, kid, you know, to yourself. Maybe you don't say it to your child, or sometimes maybe even you do, and your child, you know, outbursts, and you just say, gee, that was pretty embarrassing, you know, for a 12-year-old to act that way in the store. When we consider our kids normal. When they're not on the spectrum, you know, at that point. But with our kids being on the spectrum, if my grandchild has a meltdown in the middle of the store, you're going to see me probably be one of the guys that after I can get him calmed down, I will be doing something pretty funny and pretty silly. And I don't care if people walking down the hall or the aisle or something look at me and say, that's a 60-year-old guy acting like a monkey. I don't care, because the only person I care about is my grandchild. And it's the same way in the school system. I'm going to be there, and the thing that I always do is I want to connect face with everybody that he deals with, whether it's the people in the lunchroom or the janitor or anybody. I will come up and say, hi, I'm Brad Benton. My grandson's going here. This is Riley. You know, we've got some concerns, and we'll probably be seeing you during the year. There's going to be times where we have problems, and there's going to be times where we have good things going on. But I'm always going to be here, and I'm only concerned about Riley, and I understand you have a job to do, and I understand what you need to do through the school system. But I also understand that no matter what, he comes first in my life, which means if I have a problem, I'm going to bring it to you first, and if I don't get any satisfaction from that, I will go to the administration. I'm not saying this to be mean to you as an educator or anybody else, but he's my priority. No matter what, he's my priority. Now that's going to sit in that person's understanding that I am very serious about this. No matter what, he's my priority. So it's easier to work together than it is to work against each other.
think that's a good way to approach it,
Yeah.
from the get-go. You
Oh,
know,
right.
you
Yep.
establish that expectation, and then it's easier
Yep.
to.
And I want them to know that, hey, there's times I struggle at home, and I know there's gonna be times you struggle. But let's try to find a way to work together with it.
You might want to ask your teacher also to give a daily progress report so you have that documentation. If he's having a bad time and she's saying, or he's saying that this is not working, you can lay this down and say, look, obviously this isn't working. And when you go into the IEP meetings, you kind of lay the law down at that point and say, this is what's been going on. I need
Don't
something
ever
to
be
change.
afraid to be a strong
Oh,
advocate.
yeah. The parents that will have the most success, I find, are the ones that are the toughest and strongest
And I
advocates.
feel like I've asked for things, it doesn't happen, so, yeah.
I'm going to give you a suggestion. Can you just sit down and write out, even for yourself, what you've experienced with the way it's been at the beginning of the year, what you've tried to say, even just your memory of it, like what you've tried to say, what they've kind of said back, and then what the experience has been, so that this year when you go and you can say, look, in the past, I know you have the best intentions. In the past couple of years, this has sort of been my experience. I don't want to set you up for failure. I want to set you up to have the best year with my child as possible. So I want to set you up with the most realistic expectations. Let me tell you some things about my child. And do it from I want to set you up to have the best year possible. Here's kind of some history. And then it's not about, oh, my child's bad. It's about, I just want to really make your year great. And I think you'll be the most successful if you can like have that history to give them. And I did that. I kind of changed my tactic a little last year, and it seemed to help a little bit. And I think I don't know if that makes sense, if that change makes sense, but it really seemed to make a difference. But
I feel like I'm trying to do that every
I know,
year.
I
That's
know.
what's frustrating, because I've given history, I've given, this is, these are some things that didn't go well, these are things that don't go. The end of the year was horrific. He was basically kicked out of school at the end of the year. And so we've got a lot of anxiety about starting, and there are new people, but I don't know, it's hard when you feel like you've done all these things, but I don't feel like there's any support on the other end. Everybody's just like, oh, it's not working out here, so.
is there anybody else consistent in your life that could go with you, like another person in your life that's consistent who could go with you to some of the meetings, just to have like another?
I'm gonna invite some people this year because I've done it by
Yeah.
myself, and so that will be a change. But I hate going that route, like here and bringing my team out and backing me up, and I feel like it's more. What's that?
No, it's totally cool. I wouldn't worry about that at all. We
If-
have
if-
people
Oh, God,
with
no.
representatives.
I've had been
Yeah,
in meetings
sir.
with 15 people before that are advocating.
If you are feeling that you are not getting the results that you want, and you're trying and trying and trying, bring people along. You gotta step it up at some point here, because if something isn't working, change your game plan.
If you need a suggestion of someone who's really experienced, ask somebody in this group. We can probably find you someone who's just really good at laying out those meetings.
And part of it is my anxiety too, because I feel I'm stepping on toes by inviting every town to get area a little bit, and everybody's so busy at the beginning of the year, and it's hard for a parent to contact me about protection, advocacy, and we've got pathfinders and all these different groups, but sometimes I feel like I'm, overstepping my boundaries by putting everybody together, but.
So those parents that make teachers better. I feel like I've had parents that are very, very strong advocates, and it can be stressful at points, because sometimes like, all right, well, I'm not sure what to try next, but those parents really make you a better teacher, and it's stressful at the time, but you really come to appreciate them in the long run.
You're a good mom.
Is your child in middle school?
Elementary.
Yes, and I think when we got in high school, the caseworker actually stayed the same, but even in middle school, they changed a lot. Yeah.
And every year,
Yeah.
they change.
But in high school, they haven't. We've been the same one.
If you need to, get RRVAN involved to help back you up
Yeah.
some of these meetings.
Or like a social care.
Yeah, Barb's been in our corner.
Yeah, Barb is
Helped a
great.
lot. We were
Emily,
permanently
So even explaining stuff to us that they probably do, just breaks it down so well.
So I think that's probably what's going to make the difference, is bringing my team. I just I feel like, oh, it's overwhelming or whatever.
Don't feel like it's overwhelming. Don't feel that you're overstepping your boundaries. If you tried over and over again without the results that you want, step up the game plan.
And you're not asking
Just
for
do it.
anything unreasonable, you're just trying to get what you need and what your kid needs, and, you know, like, that's what everybody in this room is doing, we're all just trying to get what we need for our families and for our kids.
And I've had lots of teachers afterwards thank us for the information or other perspectives or parents coming forward and sharing that information. And I can't speak as an educator because that's not what I do, but as a therapist, when I've had parents come and say, hey, you know, when my child melts down, and you know, don't say if, say when, because at some point it can happen, and if it never happens, great, you know, that's good too. But you know, when they melt down, you know, here's the list of things we try, and I'm going to drop off you know, here's their favorite snack, offer this to them, you know, and kind of give me those cheat sheets. You save me like a week of therapy time with your kid. And for me, that is so helpful because I don't have to play that guessing game, and I can more quickly establish that relationship with your child, and we save ourselves time. And so and that's similar feedback that I've gotten from other educators too, when we have parents who bring in their team and other people and say, you know, here, you are so lucky you get to have so-and-so in your classroom this year, let us tell you about him. Start with the strengths, what he's good at, what you love about him, and then, you know, sometimes he has struggles. Here's things that might be a challenge for him, and here's what's been helpful. So if any of these things happen, here's what you can do, and here's how you can notify me, you know, and keeping you in the loop and how we can work together for that. I think it helps everybody, and no one ever feels like, oh, this mom's stepping on my toes, this is my classroom. I've never, ever had a school come back and say that, or a teacher say that, so don't feel guilty for it.
And I also want to take that onus off of parents as well to have to write a letter to teachers or educators or therapists. I want also even at elementary school level for parents to feel comfortable to start that self-advocacy work with children to write a letter to teachers perhaps that can be kept in their file and they have their own voice in this process as well, even if it's just a crayon written letter. And then that can also go in kind of the school file as well. When the substitute comes in, which can always be stressful for all of us, they can refer to that as well. So I think that'd be really fun for them to do as well.
We'll do one last question because we've already gone a little bit over, but then we'll have to skedaddle because I know there's another group coming. So what was your last one?
Oh, I just want to ask, but what if you don't have a list of helpful things for your school to try with them? Just because how everything's been in the past, no one has been really successful in trying to overcome these meltdowns or anything at school. His coping mechanism is to be alone. They don't look at him as doing this, but schools, they want to have a process and all that. So what do you do when you don't have a list of here's do this, and this one?
I just kind of heard a list. Did anyone else pick up on that? We need to leave them alone. Don't make them processes.
But they don't,
Then
they don't
they're
want to.
They're not doing it.
That's a really good question. Sometimes schools contract out different behavior consultants and things like people like that that have really good suggestions. And I guess to tie those two kind of questions together is, even if a student's behavior is not considered severe, I think it's a misconception that that behavior only merits, I'm sorry, what am I trying to say? A behavior intervention plan is only needed in those severe situations, but I think that can be a really useful document for students that even experience anxiety or even mild meltdowns and things like that. And I think that's something that you can advocate for in that IEP process. But yeah, again, you can always bring other people in and other perspectives, and whether it be a behavior consultant or someone who's contracted through the district, or someone like Emily or Barb or folks at Prairie. I think any new perspective would be a good thing to kind of help build your team and build the list of things that work. And so, yeah.
But I hear you, myself kind of saying that these two left alone, and we've been told that they can't leave them alone for safety reasons, and so I hear that struggle because my son is constantly that he's having meltdowns to some degree, which makes it worse. And So that is a big challenge, how to deal with that when they really do need to be alone.
Yep, and we can get creative with that. I know here when we have kids, you know, in our day tree report, we're not allowed to have kids on the site either. And so I get that rule for safety reasons, but then we get really creative with, do we have a tent in the corner? Do you get to go look for it? Do we just have a sheet in your backpack that you can throw over your desk and you can sit underneath? You know, and coming up with that list of, you know, when he's in there, he gets a flashlight, he gets his favorite book, or he gets a pillow, he gets a snack, you know, you kind of have this list of how can we kind of, I had one kid call it sheltering in place. I think he learned that from some emergency first responders or something. How can we kind of find that quiet individual space even if I can't leave my classroom or I can't leave the school? You know, what does that look like? I had one very creative teacher who had a storage closet in her room who took out the bottom 2 shelves and then hung a curtain over it. And that kind of became the hideout space. And the rule was the door had to be open, but you could be behind the curtain. You know, we know you're there, you're still, and there's still that safety kind of a thing. So I would get really creative, you know, have those headphones going to school, earbuds, you know, whatever it is that would give you that ability to kind of tune out and find your space in a place that is a very busy place. And you know your kid better than any teacher who's just met them. So write down that list of things you do at home that help. And give those to and say, you know, I know that you might not be able to do all of these here, but here's what helps. And how can we get creative and give you opportunities to use some of these tools that we use at home? I think sometimes we get more anxious about back to school than our kids do because we can see that they're nervous. So we got to help ourselves be calm and be confident and know you can do it. And maybe you take the first day off of school after you drop them off and you get a massage and then you have cookies waiting, and we all celebrate when we survive, you know? So come up with your first day of traditions too, of having to set off that on the right start and be successful and be excited, because, you know, school can be an amazing and wonderful thing and take kids to wonderful places, and my hope is that they find a spot that they really can enjoy learning. So I know our panel is wonderful. I want to thank you all for being here. I know that they're also very open to answering questions, or even leaving today. If you think of something later, feel free to contact RRVAN or our panel members. They've all been very helpful with that.
There is an RRVAN Facebook page, if, for those of you who don't know, that you can always post questions on there. If we all like it and are on there, it's also a great way to kind of connect with the panelists and have other follow-up questions answered. And if nothing else, if you post it there, those of us who help maintain that page can get those to the right people. So.
And you can private message the page too if you want your question in private.
It's a good resource for just checking in of, you know, how do I talk to you about this? So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.